Coming to you live from Anderson, South Carolina. This is the Jaren Sustar Show, where we teach you guys how to manage your money and build financial freedom through investing in real estate, all while continuing to work your job, raise your family, and while living a busy life. I'm busy, you're busy, we're all busy. I'm your host, Jaren Sustar, and I personally want to thank you guys for tuning in today. We have an absolutely great show. I love hanging out with y'all. This is so much fun. I love doing this live, and then it gets uploaded on podcast, but the live part's very fun for me and scary because if I mess up, there's no editing. So hopefully we won't mess up today. But I was thinking through my journey of just life when it comes to finances. And just so you guys know, there's more to me in my life than finances and real estate. It's just what I really love to talk about. And it's what I talk about on the internet. And so I was thinking back through, this whole journey we've been in. And you guys, if you've followed me for any time, you know my story. You've probably heard it to an extent. Grew up not with a bunch of money. My dad's a pastor, great home, great family. But money just wasn't something that was super plentiful. It wasn't something that we talked about all the time. And we weren't super wealthy. And so, I didn't grow up just ready to go into the world and buy real estate and do all these business transactions, blah, blah. My whole goal was to play college baseball. That was all I wanted to do. And so I go to college, graduate with a bunch of debt. We spend 5 years getting out of debt. And then we start buying real estate. And then we go from, hey, we were broke all this time to we kind of got a little bit of wealth now because of real estate. And here we are today. And I teach people a lot about it. And so I was thinking, all right, what are the steps that I would follow based on my journey to tell people to go through this entire process of building wealth from like the start to finish, not just real estate specific, which I'm going to get into some real estate tactics specific stuff here in a bit, but just like finance management and life in general. And so when I look at my journey and what my wife and I did, there's really 10 steps, and some of the steps are simultaneous. There's 10 things we did when I was thinking about this that had the largest impact on our lives, and I wanted to share those with you all. All right. So number one is some of these are very elementary, so hang with me. But if you follow them, it will change your life. One of the things that I've noticed the older I've gotten, I'm not that old. I'm only 33 years old, but you start to, I think, in your 30s, you start to realize what wisdom is. I'm not saying I'm wise by any means, but you start understanding things that you've heard for your entire life, people say, and it kind of went in one ear and out the other. You start understanding what they mean and why people are saying them. And one of the things for me that I have noticed that correlates to being able to do small tasks that change your life is you have to be very intentional the older you get to create the life that you want. Now, I think that's probably true for any age, but I really believe the older you get and you have a family and you have a spouse, or maybe you don't, but you've got responsibility, you've got work, life can pass us by without us really doing what we want to do, accomplishing what we want to accomplish, becoming who we want to become very quickly if we don't choose what every single day looks like. Now, I understand there's got to be flexibility there. Some days we're not going to be able to decide exactly how it looks like. But I think you guys understand the point I'm trying to make is we have to be very intentional with what we do to get the outcomes that we want to get. Okay. And so that is for all aspects of life. Like, for example, and I mentioned this in the last episode, one thing that I'm doing a couple things. I am trying to be more intentional in my life because I want certain outcomes for my life. And I'm realizing that I can't just wake up and the things that I want happen without me really, really, really working to make them happen. And so for me right now, waking up, doing gratitude journal is huge for me because it helps ground me. It helps me be thankful for what I am doing. And then within that journal, it asks me what are three things that would make today great? What is my positive affirmation for the day? And so I start my day just staying really, really grounded on what are the three things I'm thankful for today when I woke up? What are the three things that make today great? And let me hype myself up with affirmation statement. So then I know, okay, based on what I said when I was clear headed in the morning without the rush of life and without emotion, If I can accomplish just these 3 things in the day, that's what I said would make today great. And so it's been huge for me, and then I follow up at night with what were the 3 best things. And so doing that, taking a cold shower, a cold plunge has been huge for me. I know that sounds silly. I'm not a big, what's the word? Like, do this certain thing that's hip and it'll make change your life. I'm not saying that it'll change your life. I've been doing cold plunges since college because we had to do them as athletes out of necessity. But it's something, there's a law in life where you got whenever there's pleasure, there's going to be pain. Whenever there's pain, there's going to be pleasure. So I'm saying, hey, if the morning I can start myself off with a ton of pain in a cold shower, then it's going to make me feel better afterwards. And it does a lot of things to your brain that I don't have time to get into. But the whole point, and I'm not going to go through my whole daily routine, is being intentional with everything you do. Because if not, this phone can absolutely steal all of your time. It can steal all your brain power. It can steal all of your energy. It's going to lead to anxiety, depression, and a lack of output. TV, which I've told you guys, the average American watches 5 hours and 11 minutes of TV per day. 5 hours and 11 minutes a day. It's going to steal your time if you're not intentional. Your video games, your books, whatever the case may be. And so we have to really, really choose what we want to do. So it brings me back to the 10 steps that I've come up with that helped me create wealth. Of they seem minimal, but they take intentionality. Like it'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. But then we don't do them because we're not intentional every day. And we're not disciplined to say, if I will do this and let it accumulate over time, because that's the point. That's the key with doing little things daily. You don't necessarily see the impact right away, but it starts to compound. The principle of compound exists in every realm of life. And so what we're doing consistently over and over and over is going to snowball over time. And so we have to be able to zoom out and say, this didn't, I did this today. It didn't really have much effect, and say, okay, that's okay that it didn't revolutionize your day in or your life in one day. It just doesn't happen. There's not many things that are going to revolutionize, dear Lord, I can't talk, your life in one day. Maybe other than, becoming a Christian and accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior, that'll revolutionize. I can't talk your life, but outside of that, some things are going to take some compounding. So, and even that, changing your life and understanding what it means to follow Jesus will take some work too. So, not to go down that rabbit trail. Here are the 10 wealth steps that my wife and I have followed, and they've completely changed our life. And again, it's not rocket science. So, number one is making a budget. So we were broke, even if you're not broke, okay? Because we still make a budget and we're not broke anymore. But when we were broke, we sat down and we said, we've got to understand how much money's coming in, how much is going out. Every business in the world operates on a budget. If they don't, they're not in business for very long. But statistically, I don't have the numbers in front of me. A lot smaller percentage of people, not businesses, but actual individuals, don't budget. Okay, why in the world wouldn't we? We all do it at work. There's a lot of smart people who have to budget at work. They create the budgets. You have to follow budgets. But then when it comes to our personal home, we're just like, we're not going to budget. We're just going to go with the wind. It's just, we're going to figure it out day by day, how much whatever I'm feeling like spending a day, whatever my emotions are telling me I want to buy, that's what I want to buy. Well, that's the middle class. And that you hear the word escape in the rat race. That's why they stay there. They can't escape because they continue to accumulate things because they can't control where their money's going because they never take the time to write down goals or to create a budget. And then they have all these payments because they have this consumer debts. Then they're forced to go to work. And then they look at the guy who's wealthy and they get mad at him because he made different decisions and they think he's a bad person because he has lots of money and he doesn't ever work and they have to go to work. Woe is them, the blue collar guy or the blue collar gal. And they try to play the victim. You're a victim to yourself. Now, there are victims in the world who get dealt a bad hand. I'm very aware of that. But I'm talking about the standard person who has the opportunity to make the choices that they want. We live in America. Okay. We live in America. We all have choices that we can make that can make us or it can break us. And there's nobody to blame but yourself. At some point, I understand there were people to blame, but you've got to work through that. You got to look in the mirror and you got to say, today, I'm the person in charge. And so many people don't do that. And woe is them. And they live with that mentality. And as soon as you become a victim, you're in big trouble. It's going to be hard to get out of that. You go down a hole and you never really recover. So number one, make a budget. How are we talking about budgeting and being a victim? Number two is once we got that budget, you got to decrease the fluff expenses. So when we put our budget together back in 2013, we looked and said, what is this stuff that we're spending on? It's hard when you're doing that budget. You have to look at the numbers from your statements from your credit card. Get rid of that if you can't manage your money right. You don't need to be having a credit card at the time. Debit card, your bank account, whatever. Look at those statements and be very truthful with yourself on your budget. It's going to hurt because you're going to be spending a lot more money than you thought. And we have to look and say, where can I cut those fluff expenses? We got to pay for our housing. We got to pay for our gas. We got to pay for our food, right? And outside of that, depending on where we're at, we can start cutting some things off, some things of leisure and some things of pleasure until we get to a place to where we can afford them and it's not holding us back from being able to create a life of wealth that's eventually going to free us. Because people will make the comment, we only live so long, I'm going to have fun while I'm here. That is a ignorant person and a non-wealthy person's poor person mindset reaction to people who live the life of a delayed gratification to create a better life for themselves in the future. Because it's the pain pleasure thing. There's going to be some pain today to create a good life financially in the future. And the standard blue collar middle class answer is I ain't gonna be here forever. So I'm gonna go live and enjoy life while I can. The problem is, guys, whenever you hear that, it's a facade. So I don't know if you guys ever hung out with very insecure people who will act a certain way, and it's just a facade to protect their ego. This is a facade from people who are trying to protect the actual pain and hurt that they feel in their financial life. They don't feel good by being burdened with debt and owning all the toys that they have 90% of the time. They feel good when they're out on the lake on Saturday on that boat that's costing them $1,000 a month in their mortgage, plus any repairs. They feel good, and the Bud Lights help, and the Miller Lights, and the bourbon and the Tito's. It helps them feel even better. They get that dopamine hit, but then they're back on Sunday night with the sweats, not even from a hangover. That's Sunday morning. But Sunday night, they're back with the work sweats. You got the meat sweats and we got the work sweats. I'm talking about the work sweats because they know that they have to show up so that they can pay for that $1,000 boat. And for when the expense comes up and that boat's messed up and they have to spend $5,000 on their credit card that's charging them 26%, they got to keep working to then pay that off. And then they bought that four-wheeler because they want to go riding on trails every now and then. They may go deer hunt 10 times a year. So they need the four-wheeler for those 10 out of the 365 days that they hunt. And that costs them another $400 a month, plus gas, plus repairs. So it ends up being close to $600 a month. So now between the boat and the four-wheeler, we're at $1,600 a month before the boat repairs. Call it at $2,000 a month. And they're only making $5,000 a month. We ain't even paid for housing or anything else. Can you see how this starts to snowball? And this is the majority of people. This is literally 99% of people in our country. They're making these decisions. And it's very asinine when I spell it out like this. To make those decisions, it's very asinine. But it's what the society, because society thinks from a broke mindset, has made the norm. You ever met somebody who invested in a stock or index fund, or they bought a rental property and they post it on Facebook and 150 people like it and 75 of their friends comment of it and say, congratulations, girl. Congratulations, man. So proud of you. This is big. What is it? Big girl moves, big boy moves. Like that's what, let me break it down. You guys hopefully know what I'm talking about. People will go, they won't do that if they buy a rental property. They won't buy or they go buy a stock, but you let somebody go buy a new vehicle. I'm talking about, they're making $60,000 a year, which is what per month? I can't do math that quick. It's not a lot per month. All right. After taxes. And now they bought this new car that cost them $900 a month. Do you guys, what is the math on that? $60,000 divided by 12. Well, I did times 12. That would be nice. 60,000 divided by 12. That's 5,000 a month. Uncle Sam, let's just say you keep 75% of it. That's $3,750 a month. Well, she just made big girl moves, got me a Suburban, got me that Jeep Wagoneer, baby, and now they're at $1,000 a month. Well, that leaves her 2750. Leaves her 2750 to now pay for a house, to now pay for a kid's car, for kids' childcare, kids' school, food, all of it. $2,750. That's not a lot of money. But she gets congratulated by society. Oh, your car looks so good, girl. So happy for you. And they make a big deal about it off of going into tens of thousands in consumer debt. She just bought something that is going to depreciate over time. It's going to become less valuable over time. And it's going to eat into her cash flow every single month. But you let somebody go buy a rental property and you let somebody go invest in a stock, what does the average person say? What does society say when that happens? That's a little risky. Do you know what you're doing? Do you know anything about that company? Have you ever done real estate before? That rehab looks scary. Hey, you know what they say? You buy those rental properties, you're gonna get that toilet call at 2 a.m. in the morning. That's society. And so the next time that you hear a broke person say those things, or they try to come at you at them with it, just look at them and say, I love you. You're wrong. And I'm not interested in taking financial advice from you. That's all you have to say. I love you, but I think you're wrong. And I'm not interested in taking financial advice from you. And it's sad. I don't know how we got there. I think there was a lot of brainwashing. I think our education system, our education system publicly in the US, at least, is literally set up to create employees and make them feel excited about being employees, right? Which being an employee can be fantastic. Okay. I have nothing against being an employee. I think there's a bad rap to being an employee. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is hard. I love being an employee. I love it probably more than I do running my business. Okay, so there's nothing wrong, but we're groomed um, to do what people say when they say to do it, to think a certain way. Can you imagine? We're all put through the same schooling for how many 18 years of our lives? Well, not quite. We started at 5, so 13 years of our lives, and we're all taught to problem solve and think the same way. I think that's a little crazy. Hence why my kids are homeschooled. I think it's a little scary. Now I went through it and here I am. And, I think people become adults and they can work through things and create different beliefs for themselves. But I think it creates a lot of limiting beliefs that we have to work through. And, I don't know if that's what's brainwashed our society to be middle class. I think, that was what the wealthy were looking to do back in the day. I really believe it. You got the Rockefellers and folks like that. I'm not blaming the Rockefellers for everything, but you got folks and the Vanderbilts who, they created a society like that. And the sad part is a lot of people feel as though that's just how it is and they're stuck and they never are going to be able to escape that, but that's not the truth. There's a way out of there. We just have to change our limiting beliefs and we have to change our thoughts if we're going to change our future in any way or financially. So, decrease the fluff. Get rid of the crap. You don't need it. Live a simple life. Simplicity means happiness. Excess means stress. Write that down. Simplicity equals happiness. Excess means stress. Third, after we made our budget and decreased our expenses, we got a safety fund or an emergency fund in place of 3 months worth of our expenses. Okay, so we made the budget, we cut our expenses as much as possible, got it down to the bare bones, and then we built up an emergency fund of 3 months of those expenses. Okay, so if your expenses cost you 5,000 a month, you need to have an emergency fund of $15,000. It's going to be that safety net that if something were to happen, it's sitting there so you can access it. HVAC goes out or roof repair, whatever the case may be. Kid breaks an arm. You need to have some excess cash sitting on hand. People talk about, cash is dead, cash is dying. Look, you don't want to hold on to a bunch of cash because the purchasing value of the dollar goes down. So we want to invest the majority of our money into appreciating assets. But we also have to understand that having cash on hand as a safety net is very helpful. I think a lot of people hear blanket statements of like, don't keep any cash on hand. And I think the people saying that oftentimes don't necessarily mean don't keep zero cash on hand. It's just saying, if you look at a pie chart, have 90% of your cash invested into assets, and then let's keep a little bit on hand for a rainy day. Or, I like keeping cash on hand to bless people. I'll take cash to a grocery or excuse a grocery store, or more often a restaurant, and leave people a nice tip. And we'll talk about giving here in a little bit. Or if I want to buy something, then I got cash and I can go buy it. Whatever the case may be, it's definitely good to have cash on hand. But third thing we did was we got a safety fund of 3 months of our expenses. Number four, and this is kind of going on during all of this, so this isn't necessarily chronological, is you got to increase your income. Sorry, you got to do it. If you're already making 100, 150, 200 plus, we don't have to focus as much on increasing our income right now as you do making a budget and decreasing your stupid expenses and getting your emergency fund in place. But I would say if you're making six figures or less, I want to challenge you to get to the place of where you're making six figures in 2025. I truly believe, and this is going to be a statement that some of you guys aren't going to agree with, some of you aren't going to like. I truly believe in 2025. Um, it's not just 2025, but the day and age that we live in, it is very palatable to go make six figures. I don't know if palatable is the right word there. I don't even know. Maybe I'm just hungry. So I'm thinking about my palate. But it is very doable to go make six figures. I mean that. And I understand if you're not anywhere close to that, you're thinking, bro, you're talking out of your what right now. No, I've been there. I started making 45K a year. Then I think I made about 55. Then I was at 64, then 72, then 90. And then I think 5 years in, do my math right, 40, 50, yeah, 4 or 5 years in, I finally hit that six-figure mark. And so how do you do that? Well, there's a number of ways. Number one, I think everybody should have a side hustle at all times. I've had a side hustle through every job I've had. I've delivered fruit. I've had pressure washing businesses. I've sold software on the side. I've done online business. I've done real estate on the side. If you want to get ahead, you have to put in time more than other people. That's going to allow you to get ahead. Input is going to dictate output. Okay. So if you're just working 40 hours a week, uh, it's going to be hard for you to get ahead. And I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, but it's the truth. Now, there becomes a time on the other side of the grind to where you can scale that back and you can start working 15 or 20 hours a week with much higher output because of the input you put on the front end, compound interest taking its toll over time, businesses compounding, right? And then systems in place and plugging other people in, right? And maybe we'll talk about that in another episode, but time can actually decrease in what you're doing, and it takes some time to get there. But at the beginning, what you put in is going to be what you get out. And then adding more value to the workplace. That's how you get paid. When you get paid for the value you add, okay? And so for me, for example, when I was 22 years old, I knew I wanted to get into sales. I looked at all these different careers. I didn't even know what human resources was. I didn't. I didn't want to be an engineer. My brain doesn't work like that. They're boring as crap. Love all you engineers. You guys are so monotonous and mundane. Most of you are my best friends because we're so different. I love hanging out with you. But I knew I just love people. I love talking. I love relationships, and I love persuasion. It's fun. Like, it's fun to get somebody in my corner. I don't mean persuasion. When I say persuasion, I think you have a negative connotation. I mean it in a fun way, in the business world, in a good way. I'm persuading somebody to buy something that's going to help them. And then in life, just like I always like to convince my friends to do the crazy thing I was thinking of. Right. So I'm not talking about anything dumb here, but I knew I wanted to get into sales. And so I was dumb enough, aka smart enough, to look and say, all right, if I want to have a career in sales, what do I need to do now that's going to allow me to be more valuable in sales in the future? And so I went and worked at this place called Centos, which is a large uniform company, because they are known for like one of the greatest sales training programs in the country. And so I didn't start in sales. I started on a box truck delivering clothes and picking up dirty floor mats, put new floor mats down. And I went there though because I knew that if I had that on my resume, it was going to help me in the future, but also more so than that, they were going to take me under their wing and they were going to teach me the things I needed to learn to be able to go and dominate in the workplace from a sales perspective. And so I went to Centos, had success in the role they had me in, which I did want to be in, but know your role, do your job. The team needed me in that role. I did it and I excelled in that role. But while I was excelling in the role they put me in, I was spending time working with the sales manager, reading sales books that he recommended, and then he would have me present to him on those sales books. I didn't really understand what he was doing at the time, but I saw what he was doing was he was having me gather information through these books, and then he wanted to see how I was going to process and articulate that information to him. And so he was making me better in sales, and he was making me more valuable in sales and learning skills that he knew that I was going to need, among other things, so many other things they teach you at this business. But the whole point is I went somewhere reputable who everybody else, especially in the medical sales world, which in my opinion is the top of the top, they knew that if you go to Centos and sell, Centos is going to have you ready to be successful. And so I went with the brand that was popular, and then I had them train me. And so what do you think that allowed me to do over time? That allowed me to increase my income substantially over time because I was trained by the sensei masters of Centos. And then I had success while I was there. And so then people are like, dude, this guy's valuable. In the marketplace of sales, we want this guy on our team because he's been trained by the right people. He's had a lot of success. He knows what he's doing. And so then a new position comes up in pharmaceutical sales or comes up in medical device sales. And they're like, bro, you were at Centos? You had, these are the numbers that you put up there. You were trained by them. Come work for us. Well, you're probably, what was your comp plan there? You're making 100, bro. You can make 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 times that. You interested in coming working for us? And that's how it works. And that's in anything in life, bro. If you didn't grow up playing sports, get into the sports world. It'll show you. Not everybody gets a participation trophy. You are awarded playing time based on the value that you can offer to your team. And the same thing's true in the business world. And so make yourself more valuable. Whatever your field is, go find the most successful people in it and figure out what they did and copy it. Not rocket science. Number 5, we paid off all our consumer debt, excluding our home. I don't look at a home as consumer debt. I look at that as, people will argue, is it asset or liability? I get where the liability argument comes from when your personal home because you have to pay for it, but it increases in value over time based on historical data. And a lot of people, I think 60 or 70%, 70%, I think 69% of Americans, the majority of their wealth is stored in their personal home. So telling people not to buy their home and rent, anybody who's telling you that, they're just looking for like clicks. There's no way anybody actually believes that the average person should rent and not buy a home. You're going to build so much more wealth by buying a home. That's not what this is about today, but just jot that down as you hearing that from Jaren. We want to pay off our consumer debt. So we've got our budget in place, decreased our fluff expenses. We've got emergency fund of 3 months. We're increasing our income while we're doing all this. Now we need to pay off the consumer debt. I use what's called the debt snowball method. It's where you start with your smallest debt, pay it off, and then roll that amount into paying off the next largest debt, next largest debt, next largest debt, next largest debt. This is the worst part of the wealth building journey. This also takes the most intentionality and the most discipline. Quite frankly, this sucks. I did it from 2013 to 2018, and it's absolutely freaking miserable. Guess what? You guys hear me talk about that pleasure pain balance, that law of life, bro. You put yourself through the grind of getting rid of those bad mistakes and decisions that you made and paying them off. On the other side of you doing that, barring you making some really dumb decisions along the way, is a lot of pleasure. A lot of good things are on the other side of it. And that's part of why I tell my story is I know so many people start behind the 8 ball financially. They're hurting. They don't have enough money to cover their bills, or they got too much debt. Maybe they do have enough money to come in, but their debt's eating them up. They don't ever they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They think they're going to be like this forever. I felt all those emotions. But if we can remove emotions and look at logic and sit down, this is where we have to go back to step 1, which is budget. We sit down and we look and we say, okay, we've got this much coming in. We've got this much going out. Let's cut these expenses. All right, now let's look. We've got this much left over. And then along that time, you're getting a side gig. Your wife's getting a side gig. You're increasing your status at your W-2, whatever the case may be. and you're going to take all of that excess, everything you don't need to pay for living, all that excess, and you're going to go pay off debt. And you're going to map it out at the beginning. Okay. This helps me. And I'm about to do, when I get off of this, the students that we coach in our rental academy, we're doing a huge goal setting call today at 1 p.m. And so I think the reason I do this, our students bought over $12 million in real estate last year. It's crazy. And we got a goal of 15 million as a group this year. And I attribute a lot of it to goal setting and writing down on paper what we want to accomplish. And so I think it's important to write down and say, okay, here's how long it's going to take me to pay off all of my debt going at this rate. I have this amount of money left over. If I go through and pay off this small debt and it opens up, let's say 300 additional bucks per month, because I'm not having to pay it anymore. We're going to roll that plus everything we were paying towards that small debt into the next debt. And it's going to snowball over time because you're going to be able to throw more money, more money, more money. Okay. And write down how long it's going to take. Put that thing on your calendar. If it's 3 years, if it's 4 years, that's fine. That's okay. It took me 5. It took me 5 years. Been there, done that. But you can be looking ahead and saying, bro, just stay the course. Those days where it's tough, when your friends are buying all these fun toys and they're going on these large, lavish vacations and they're drowning themselves in debt, and you're on the other side of thing and you're trudging through this quicksand, it keeps pulling you back and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. But you make that payment and you start tearing down that debt. It's amazing. And it's hard to pay off debt because you'll make a payment onto something large and you just don't feel like you make a big dent. I get it. I get it. And that's where the debt snowball helps, because if we knock our smallest out first, it gives us some momentum because money's psychological. It makes us feel good. Then we can go to the next one. There's going to be those dog days where I had a $65,000 student loan debt to where you'd make a $2,000 payment against that. And you're like, God dang it, bro. Now I still got 63,000 left. And then I make another one, 61,000. Well, next thing you know, after a year and a half, you're like, brother, I've cut that in half. And because we've tracked the data, we've written down our goals, we know where we started, and we start seeing like, okay, we're accomplishing a little bit here. But here's what I can tell you. It's worth it. Get out of consumer debt, the student loans, the credit cards, the consumer cards, pay loan, all of it. Get out of it. You know, there's an argument for vehicles. You know, if you got a very low interest rate and you're making good money and it costs you $300 a month on your vehicle, fine, argue with me about it. I don't owe anybody a dime. I don't have vehicle payments. I don't have credit card payment. I don't have anything. And I feel pretty freaking good. You want to argue about keeping your vehicle payments? Fine. I'm not going to argue with you. Do it if you want to. I got rid of it all and I feel amazing. So we're going to get rid of our consumer debt. Then what we're going to start doing next is all simultaneous to an extent. 6, 7, 8, 9. These are things that I did. Some of you guys are going to be like, what? You did that? You didn't just buy real estate? You invested in some other things, believe it or not. I did. Although I will say real estate's given me the best returns overall. So, number one, if you work at a company and they're going to give you a match on a 401k investment, I think you're an idiot not to take it. You'll hear these guys talk about don't invest in a 401k, blah, blah, don't do this. If your company is saying, hey, for every 10,000 you put in, we're going to give you 10,000, bro, take the 10,000, put 10,000 in retirement throughout the year and let them match it and get free money. It's free money. It is free money. You know, I've heard all the arguments for what the 401k is. It's a scam. It's this, it's that. You can't touch your money. Fine. I will hear some downsides to it, but there are some upsides to it. Number one, if you have an employer match, which I'm saying to at least minimum invest that, you're going to get free money from your company. Okay. It is what it is. And then it's in investments. So you can choose what you want to invest it in. So it's going to grow over time. The market on average is going to return anywhere from 8 to 12%. Okay. And then I think for a lot of people, the discipline of not being able to touch it without a penalty is a positive. I know that it seems as though it's a negative, you know, and the government probably did it for a reason. And I hate when the government does stuff. But I will say from the consumerism standpoint, from the discipline standpoint, humans, you may would pull in and out of that 401k too much if it wasn't touchable. And so now you can invest in something where employers going to match you, and then you can't touch it without a big penalty. And so it deters you from messing with that. And then you become 60, 65, 70 years old, and you have, $1 million, you have $2 million, $3 million, 5, $10 million at that stage of your life. When I look at my wealth building, I've always tried to work like all the way at the end of my life backwards, because I know there's no guarantee, right? There's no guarantee that we're going to live here tomorrow. Anything can happen to any of us, but there's a lot of people who make it to 60s, 70s, and 80s. And statistically, I think the average male lives till 72 or 75, female maybe close to 80. And so statistics, if we play the odds, we're going to be here for part of our 70s, males and females, and maybe longer than that. And so we need to prep for it. What happens to so many people is they get to be 50, 60, 70, and they're worked out. They don't want to work anymore. They're tired. And guess what? They have to show up every day. So I see those people. I go into the grocery stores. I go to Walmart. I go to the malls. I go to restaurants where they're being a waiter or waitress. I go to the doctor's office where they're having to be the front desk. Like I see it everywhere. And the answer to why they're there isn't, I'm passionate about answering these phones and scheduling appointments for this doctor. Now, some of them, they love it. They've been there forever and it's their family. Fine. There's a great argument for that. Many people are standing at Walmart greeting people because they had no financial plan when they were younger. Bro, if we're saying we can invest X amount into a retirement account, and the company's going to match us on that, and that's going to take care of us through our 60s, 70s, and 80s, get that taken care of. Because then everything else you invest for is, you can be intentional and say, I'm doing this for my 50s. So what did I do? For example, I invested in my 401k. We got hundreds of thousands in our 401k, and we're only 33 years old. It's set on pace to be worth $3-4 million if I stop today and let it compound over time. If we continue adding to my employer's match, then I'll get even more, right? And so what I've done is I've protected myself from 60, 70, 80 financially. All right. Then what did I do next? I said, okay, I've got that taken care of. Companies match me. It's free money. Now I want to go invest in things that are going to take care of me in my 50s. And I looked around. I was like, okay, what's the best things to invest in? Well, for me, it was a no-brainer. You look at the wealthiest people who've been wealthy since the beginning of time, and you hear the statistics: 90% of millionaires own this asset. It was real estate. I was like, bro, everybody who owns real estate and who's owned it since the beginning of creation becomes wealthy. So I need to go buy real estate. Well, what was interesting about real estate is, not only was I adding the greatest asset in the world that I knew was going to help me become wealthier over time, but a lot of times when you're buying rental properties, do you know what the length amount of the mortgage is on rental properties oftentimes? Now, you can get a number of different plans, but I would say the standard commercial loan length of amortization is 20 years. All right. I started buying real estate when I was 27. So let's call it early 30 for early math. What's 30 plus 20 years? That's 50. So I already told you guys my 60s, 70s, and 80s were in a pretty strong position through the retirement account that I've been matching through my employer. Then I said, how do I impact my 50s? And I went and I bought 21 rental properties in a year and a half. And I said, okay, if I can get 21 rentals, even if they're not cash flowing a bunch, but I can go ahead and stack those to my name. Let's see. The average one is worth 150,000. I'm just throwing numbers out at the time. Well, at the time they're probably worth 125,000. Let's do that. 125,000 times 21. They're worth 2.62 million. I had a bunch of debt on them at the time. Probably 80% of that was in debt. So we're 2.62 million. And let's say they grow by 3% every year. You're looking at was 100. This is going to be terrible math, but let's just see. Let's say they grow by another $2 to $3 million over the next 20 years. That means when I'm 50, I'm going to have 21 properties that are paid off worth $5 million, and they're each bringing in, we'll just say 1,500 a month times 20. That's $30,000 a month. Expenses are going to be 40% of that. So we keep 60. That's $18,000 a month in cash flow on those first batch of properties that I bought in 2018 and 2019. So my 50s, I'm looking at $18,000 a month in cash flow plus $5 million worth of assets. Well, then I started looking like, well, if I just keep buying more, then my 40s are going to be taken care of. And then if I flip now and then buy some high cash flowing properties now, like some Airbnbs, some mobile home parks, I can affect my now as well through strategies. Or I can add some liquid investments by putting money into index funds or stocks and having some liquid access to affect my life now. Well, now I've got all this excess money that I'm investing and I'm getting all these returns back. Well, what if I go ahead and I start saving for my children's college through a 529 plan? I got 4 kids. What if I didn't have to sell real estate uh, to pay for their college? I could continue holding on to those properties. Instead, I just put X amount of dollars per child into a 529 account today. How much would that give me? Oh, that'd give me 100 plus per student, per child of mine that's going to be a student. Will that cover all of it? No, but hey, they can go get a scholarship, whether academically or athletically. And if not, here's what dad gave you. You go figure it out the rest for yourself. I had to pay for my college. They'll be okay. Let's stop babying our kids, by the way, while we're talking about it. We want to keep them so protected from any hardship and from any pain and from any adversity that we're raising a bunch of weak, mild, woke kids. Let your kids face some hard. Let your kids face some hard. Stop making everything so easy for them. Stop running to them when they fall on the ground and scrape their knee and picking them up and coddling them. They're 8 years old every time they get hurt. Love them, provide for them, protect them, give them care, give them the coddle when they need it. But let them go through some hard stuff and learn, because if you don't allow them to go through the hard stuff under your watch, where you can actually monitor how hard we let it get, and more importantly, we can monitor and modify their reaction to adversity, then what's going to happen is they're going to go fly out from under your little shelter at 19, 20, 21 years old, God willing, they get out of your house, and they are going to be an absolute disaster, because the real world, it's not the little shelter under mom and dad where we can allow pain to affect them, but then we can also stop it to a certain extent, and we can also teach them on how we react to that and how we trust in God to get us through these things. It may not be perfect, but we know that he's got a plan and it's his will, and we'll trust him, and whatever comes our way, take it to him in prayer. We can do all that, but then when they leave, if we haven't allowed them to face those hard things under our watch, it's your kids are in trouble. So if you've been doing that, stop. Number 10. So 6, 7, 8, 9, we're investing 401k up to employer match, buy discounted real estate. You guys know I love real estate. Invest in children's college, invest in liquid assets like index funds or stocks. And then number 10, this is the best part. Well, really kind of 10 and 11 is give to God. So pay your tithes all throughout all this. Today, pay your tithes. I don't care if you're drowning in debt. Give God 10% of everything you make. I pay him 10% of my gross every month. Always have. Been blessed beyond measure. And then number 11, bless others. Bless others. It is, I forget how the Bible verse goes, and I just read it. I want to say it's in Matthew. I could be butchering this. Somebody who knows the Bible better than me, remind me. But it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. It is more blessed to give than to receive. And one of the greatest things about following this plan that I just outlined and building wealth is being able to impact people's lives who need help. And you can't do that if you don't take care of yourself first. So go through these things, make a budget, decrease the expenses, get a safety fund in place of 3 months, increase your income, Pay off your consumer debt, excluding your home. Invest in your 401k, at least up to your employer match. Buy discounted real estate. Invest in your children's college. Invest in liquid assets, and then give to God and bless others. You follow this game plan, folks, and you're going to look back a decade from now, and financially, you're going to be in a lot better place than you are today. You're going to have had a lot more success than you thought you would have ever had. And one thing I want to end on, I was thinking of a story that happened to me this week. There was a customer of mine. I've been dealing with this customer almost a decade, and I've built a lot of trust with them. And I've taken care of them. I've done the right things. I've helped them get product when they need product. I've helped them solve issues, all kinds of things for 8 years. They know, hey, I can count on Jaren. And we had an internal partner of ours at our company who's outsourced. So they don't necessarily work for the company I work for. They help their role is outsourced. Has to do with, I'm not even going to say it, but their role is outsourced. And they had been, not on purpose, causing some issues with this customer. Just the way that this outsourced department was graded, it was causing them to be a pest to my customer. And so my customer was having a bad day one day, decides to send me an email. And I was like, hey, Jaren, I love you. Been working with you for almost a decade, but we think we're going to have to go to a new vendor because I just can't stand working with this person anymore. Not me, the third. And obviously, it kind of jolted me whenever a customer sends that to you. They buy, and my part of my income comes from them, and so I was like, man, I gotta figure this out. And so I said, can I come by? I'm right down the road. Can I just come by and let's figure out a game plan? And she's like, sure, yeah, come on by whenever. And so I stopped by. It was actually, what's today? I went by Friday of last week. And I said, tell me what's going on. And so she walked me through everything that had been happening, how this person had been bugging them. They're blowing them up every day about these certain issues. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I said, I value you guys as a customer. I've been working with you almost a decade, and I called her by her name. I said, I love you guys. And I am so sorry that this has gotten out of hand. I said, I will handle it, and I'll get it set up to where this particular person can't talk to you anymore. They have to come through me. I'll be your buffer. I said, and in the meantime, me and you will work together to what these people are trying to resolve. I'll get it resolved for you, and we'll do it. Me and you'll do it together. They'll leave you alone. We'll knock it out. You'll never hear from them again. I said, and you'll just hear from me and the other counterpart that's local, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. And I'm so sorry. And I want to ask you today, will you please not go to another vendor? I love you guys. I will be distraught. And she looked at me, she said, Jaren, I was just having a bad day. Um, you've been so good to us. I trust you. You've done the right thing. You help us get things done. She's like, we're not going to go to another vendor. If you're telling me you can do these things, we're going to stick with you guys. And before I left, it was interesting. We had settled that trust, and we started talking about the assets that they owned and what they needed. And I walked out of that place with a purchase order, went in just to solve an issue of them potentially leaving, not using my company as a vendor anymore because of this person. They wrote me a purchase order for $150,000 for a product I have because I was able to resolve the issue that was in place, and then I was able to show them what they need and how I can provide it for it after that. And so walked out with $150,000 PO, and all is well. And so why do I tell you that story? I was just thinking, it made me think, I was thinking about this episode today. It just made me think how important trust is. Everything in life is predicated on trust and doing the right thing and taking care of people over an extended period of time. And so I want to encourage you today, and whatever you're doing, whether you love your job, hate your job, I don't care. Go impact the people that you come in contact with today. Do the right thing for them. Work with integrity. Help however you can. Go the extra mile. Don't stop at the status quo. Do the extra thing. At Centos, if the smallest customer, when I was on a box truck, I'd been driving this box truck from 4 a.m. and then I got back to the plant at 5 p.m. It took me an hour to get all my stuff done. And then a customer called in and said, hey, we're short one roll of towels. Can you guys bring us one this week? You know what the policy was at Centos? Do you think it was we take it to them the next day or sometime later that week when we get to it? No. What do you think Jaren had to do at 6 p.m. that night after he had just got done on a 14-hour shift, tired, ready to go home, lay down? I got my personal car and I took the rolls of paper towels to this customer, tiny customer. And this happened multiple times with customers, all, but I specifically remember this one time. Tiny customer, hardly any income for the company, but did the right thing. And then you build that trust, and that comes back around at some point and it benefits you. We don't do it because of that. We do it because we do the right thing. But that trust gives you the ability to have bad things happen down the road, have mistakes happen down the road, and people will be more lenient, forgive you because they know, I know that Jaren, or I know whoever listen to this is going to take care of me because he's proven he has for 8 years and 10 years, 12 years. And you can show them and remind them at different times you've done that. And it is a fantastic way to have success in everything you're doing. So no matter what you're doing, do it the best of your ability, do the right thing, go the extra mile. You're going to have success in life. It's going to give you more income to be able to go invest more, which is ultimately going to lead to that financial freedom. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Jaren Susstar Show. I'll see you next week. Have a great time.